expensive guitar and cheap amp, or expensive amp and cheap guitar? So I already have an opinion on this topic, but I really am interested in what you guys have to say as well. So make sure you leave a comment on what your preference is and why you prefer it. Of course, this discussion is predicated on the notion that we live in a world where we can choose to have an expensive piece of equipment. Obviously, not everyone is in the same situation, but in a fantasy world where you can have any guitar you want or any amp you want, would you rather have an expensive guitar and a cheap amp, or an expensive amp and a cheap guitar? You must choose one. What is your choice and why do you choose it? I'm gonna tell you what I think. So I've talked to a lot of guitar players about this and I've thought a lot about it. I don't know, it's just fun to think about. I like hypothetical situations that involve amazing gear. And it should go without saying, but I'll say it anyways. I am not correct. This is a subjective topic by far, so I'm not trying to rile anyone up, or am I? Basically, I've thought about this question and it came down to one thing. Are we guitar players or are we amp players? I think we're guitar players. Having an expensive guitar and a less expensive amp, cheap amp, I'm using the word cheap loosely, don't take any offense to that language. I really believe that having an expensive guitar makes you pick up the guitar more than if you had a cheap guitar. You could have the most amazing sounding amp in the world, but if your guitar intonation is off and it just isn't fun to play or look at or feel, then you're not gonna have a lot of incentive to pick it up. Whereas with an expensive guitar, I just think it's so much more fun to not only see it in your room and get that feeling, oh, that's a nice guitar, but pick it up and play it even without an amp. Just really gets me excited to even pick up the guitar. Whereas with a less expensive guitar, just not quite the same feeling. I tried to be as fair as possible. Obviously, I haven't picked up this guitar. It was in a closet somewhere. It doesn't even have all the strings on it, but I think that's a testament to the fact that I prefer nicer guitars because I just have no incentive. I have no reason to keep this one pristine and nice because it just doesn't do it for me. Tone is in the fingers. You can have an expensive amp and have a cheap guitar and get a really nice tone out of it, of course, but I think what's more important is finding your own voice on the instrument, and I think it's easier to do that. I'm not saying you have to have a high quality instrument to do that, but I think it's easier and more fun to do it with a higher quality instrument than a lesser one. So in a world where you have to choose one combination, expensive guitar, cheap amp, or expensive amp, cheap guitar, which one do you choose and why? I told you why I would choose the expensive guitar and the cheap amp, but I could be completely opposite of your opinion and I'd love to hear what you think. So please leave a comment and let's get a conversation started. And before I end this video, I just need to reiterate, there are people who can't afford expensive anything. I have worked really hard my whole life to be able to afford nice instruments, but it wasn't always that way. So don't ever feel like you need an expensive piece of gear in order to achieve success as a musician. After all, the passion for music is what will make us pick up the guitar no matter what it is and plug into any amp no matter what it is. If you have the drive to succeed, then you will. But having some sweet gear along the way never hurt anyone, did it? Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, this little conversation starter, and until next time, keep shredding.